You've been there. You're arguing with someone, and no matter how obvious your point is, they just don't get it. You bring facts. They bring louder opinions. You stay logical. They get emotional. And somehow, you end up frustrated, drained, and questioning your sanity. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You're not losing because you're wrong. You're losing because you're playing the wrong game. Imagine this. You're in a debate, maybe with a friend, a coworker, or even someone online. You explain your point clearly. You even simplify it so anyone could understand. But they twist your words. They ignore evidence. They repeat the same argument again and again. You correct them. They double down. You prove them wrong. They move the goalpost. And suddenly, what started as a simple discussion turns into a never-ending loop. Now you're irritated, maybe even angry. And worst of all, you feel like you have to win. Because if you don't, it feels like they're getting away with being wrong. So you push harder. And that's exactly where you lose. Let's break this down simply. There are 3 psychological reasons why you can't win these arguments. First, they're not trying to find the truth. They're trying to protect their ego. Most arguments aren't about facts. They're about identity. When you challenge someone's belief, you're not just attacking an idea. You're attacking how they see themselves. So their brain goes into defense mode. It doesn't ask, is this true? It asks, how do I not lose? That's why logic doesn't work, because you're talking to their brain while they're listening with their ego. Second, the less someone knows, the more confident they feel. People who lack understanding don't realize what they don't know, so they overestimate themselves. That's why the loudest person in the argument is often the least informed. And no matter how much evidence you bring, you can't convince someone who thinks they're already right. Third, emotional reasoning beats logic every time. You think arguments are about facts. They're not. They're about feelings. If someone feels right, no amount of data will change their mind, because in their world, feeling equals truth. So when you present logic, they don't process it. They reject it. Here's the moment most people miss. You think you're having a discussion. They think you're in a fight. And fights aren't won with truth. They're won with dominance, persistence, and noise. So when you try to win with logic, you're bringing a chessboard to a boxing match. So what do you do instead? This is where everything changes. First, stop trying to win. The moment you try to win, you've already lost, because now you're emotionally invested. And once you're emotional, you're playing their game. Instead, shift your goal. Don't aim to win. Aim to understand or disengage. Second, ask questions instead of making statements. Instead of saying, you're wrong, ask, why do you think that? This forces them to think, and most people aren't thinking as deeply as they believe. Let them talk. Give them space. If their logic is weak, it will expose itself. You don't have to attack. Third, don't argue with someone who isn't open to change. You need to recognize when someone isn't debating, they're defending. And once you see that, walk away. Not because you lost, but because the game was never winnable. Fourth, protect your energy like it matters, because it does. Every argument costs you time, focus, and emotional energy. And for what? To prove a point to someone who doesn't care? That's a bad trade. Your energy is more valuable than your need to be right. Fifth, use silence as a weapon. Silence removes the reaction they're feeding on. When you stop engaging, they lose momentum, because arguments need 2 people. Without you,
it dies. Here's the shift that changes everything. Not every argument deserves your intelligence. Some people don't want clarity, they want validation, and no amount of reasoning will fix that. So next time you're stuck in a pointless argument, pause. Ask yourself, am I trying to find the truth or am I trying to win? Because if the other person isn't looking for truth, there's nothing to win. And the smartest move you can make is knowing when to stop playing.